So imagine you've just gone through a completely brutal breakup.
Oh, yeah. Just gut-wrenching.
Right. And your immediate overwhelming instinct is probably to, you know, show him exactly how much he hurt you.
Of course it is.
Like you want to post those cryptic song lyrics on your story, or you want to make sure he sees you hurting so he feels incredibly guilty.
Yeah, or the opposite, right? Like a highly curated photo of you out at a club looking amazing.
Exactly. Just to make him feel that instant burning jealousy.
Yeah.
Well, today we are looking at a document that says doing any of that is actually the absolute fastest way to ensure he never, ever misses you.
It's just, it's the ultimate paradox of human behavior, really, because when we feel the most powerless, our instinct is to perform for the very person who took our power away.
Yeah.
We want to orchestrate their reaction.
And that is exactly what we were tearing into today in this deep dive. We're looking at a really fascinating piece of writing by Sofia Reed, and it's titled, How to Make Him Regret Losing You.
It's a great title.
It is, but I want to set the ground rules for you listening, right out of the gate. We are not talking about petty revenge here.
Right. Definitely not.
We are not strategizing about how to, key someone's car or ruin their life.
Yeah.
We're talking about a profound psychological shift. It's about how you reach a point where you become so undeniably yourself that the other person realizes exactly what they let go of. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because the foundational claim here completely flips the script on how we're taught to handle a broken heart.
It really does.
The women who make a man regret leaving are never the ones who chase him down to demand closure.
What's fascinating here is the total rejection of performing your recovery. Breakups usually put us on a stage of our own making,
100%.
We either perform our grief to elicit pity, or we do this toxic positivity thing where we pretend we're totally fine. But this approach argues that real power, the kind that actually shifts the dynamic, comes from authentic self-reclamation.
Wow. Yeah.
You have to get quiet, go entirely inward, and basically come back as something he fundamentally does not recognize.
Which is why, whether you are currently surviving a breakup and just, trying to get through a Tuesday, or you're just fascinated by the psychology of power dynamics, this deep dive is essentially a masterclass in taking your agency back.
Absolutely.
But getting to that point starts with a step that sounds so easy on paper, but in reality, it feels like biological torture. And that is doing absolutely nothing.
Total. Echoing silence, it's the very first directive in the text. And you're right, it feels like torture because you are essentially fighting a withdrawal symptom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you're with someone, your brain gets used to a constant trip of dopamine and oxytocin from their attention.
So it's literally chemical.
Exactly. When that's cut off, your nervous system just goes into panic mode. The urge to reach out isn't just emotional, it's a physiological craving to regulate your nervous system.
I mean, the urge to text an ex just sits in your chest like physical pressure.
Yeah.
You convince yourself that if you could just send one more paragraph explaining your side, or if you could just get one more apology out of him, the pressure will go away.
Right, the magical final text.
Yeah. But this text demands a strict 30-day period of absolutely zero contact, no exceptions.
And there's a very specific mechanical reason for this. Men and women often process loss on entirely different timelines.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, when a breakup happens, women tend to feel the absolute crushing weight of it immediately. Men, generally speaking, experience an initial sense of relief or distraction.
Aye.
They don't actually feel the reality of the absence until the everyday noise of your presence fades away. So if you're constantly texting him or showing up in his social media views, you're just giving him a buffer.
It is so true. It actually makes me think of phantom limb syndrome.
Oh, interesting.
Like when someone loses an arm, the brain still expects to receive signals from it. They can almost feel the shape of it. And that's what this silence does to the person who left. He can only feel the exact shape of what he gave up when the constant everyday noise of your presence finally stops.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
Because by staying in contact, you're essentially functioning as a prosthetic limb for his emotional comfort.
You are softening the blow of his own decision. The 30-day silence removes the prosthetic, but, it's not just about ignoring his texts. It requires removing him from your social media entirely.
Oh, man. The social media trap.
Right. Not to make a loud, dramatic statement, but to protect your own visual environment.
Okay, but I have to confess something here, and I know anyone listening has been in this exact spot. Social media is the absolute battlefield where we all lose our minds during a breakup.
Oh, completely.
It is so easy to say, I'm maintaining silence, while simultaneously, orchestrating a highly complex covert operation using a burner Instagram account just to see if he watched your story about having brunch.
It's embarrassing, but it is so human.
It's so human.
And that's exactly why the author stresses that unbothered energy cannot be faked. He sees right through the cryptic captions and the perfectly curated throwbacks.
Yeah, he knows.
If you're posting a photo specifically hoping it ruins his day, you're still actively in a relationship with him in your head. He's still the center of your orbit.
So true.
A woman who heals quietly, who simply drops off the radar, is deeply unsettling to a man who expected to watch her spin out of control.
And there's a practical tip in here that I absolutely love for dealing with that spin out. When that overwhelming, panicky urge to text him hits, and you write the text in your Notes app.
Yes, the Notes app is your best friend.
You just type out every angry, sad, desperate thought, and then you just close the app.
It's a great containment strategy. Now, it is worth noting the author does actually offer a free supplementary guide called 5 Texts That Make Him Miss You.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
which focuses on creating emotional connection down the line. But she is absolutely adamant that attempting any kind of strategic communication is completely useless if you haven't laid the foundation of absolute silence first.
I'm still hung up on how agonizing that silence is, though. Like when every fiber of your being wants to fight for the relationship, committing to 30 days of ghosting your own life feels like you're just letting him get away with it.
And that is the exact illusion you have to break. The silence is not a tactic you're deploying against him. It's a protective boundary you're building for yourself.
Boundary.
You're starving a toxic dynamic of its oxygen. Think about it mechanically. As long as you are focused on what he's doing, you cannot hear your own thoughts. The silence clears the stage.
So you enforce the boundary, you sit in the silence, you don't post the revenge selfie, you don't send the text. But the natural consequence of that silence is this enormous, terrifying void.
Yeah.
You're suddenly left with all this anxious, leftover energy that used to be directed at him. How do you keep from just drowning in that void?
Well, this is where the shift happens from what you are actively avoiding to what you must actively build. The directive here is super clear. You have to focus entirely on becoming, not returning. Yeah. Grief is not just sadness. From a biological standpoint, it is raw, activated energy. Your body is just pumping out adrenaline and cortisol.
Right, your fight or flight system is just stuck in the on position.
Yeah.
And if you misuse that raw energy, you just end up immobilized in bed, scrolling through his new followers at 3 in the morning.
Exactly. But if you channel that exact same biological energy correctly, it can launch the most productive, transformative season of your life. The text talks about women who use this void to start businesses, finish degrees, run half marathons, or completely reinvent their careers.
It's like, if we're talking about mechanics here, it's like kinetic versus potential energy. Grief isn't just sadness, it's rocket fuel. You just have to point the rocket at your own life instead of his.
That's a great way to put it.
But the document points out something really interesting about the collateral damage of relationships. It notes that romantic relationships are inherently insular.
Very much so.
When you're in one, your world naturally narrows. You spend less time with friends, you drop hobbies. So when the relationship ends, you aren't just missing him, you are missing an entire social infrastructure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, isolation breeds contraction. When you're isolated, your world shrinks down to the exact size of your pain.
Oh, wow.
To counteract this, you have to actively rebuild your social world. You have to call the friends you neglected. You have to accept the dinner invitations you would normally decline because you'd rather stay home and wallow. Connected people radiate a completely different frequency than isolated people.
Connected people radiate. I really want to highlight that because it ties directly into the physical rebuilding the source demands. I don't mean the cliche revenge body where you lose 20 pounds just to make and do a double take.
Oh, definitely not that.
The focus here is incredibly grounded. It's like sleep properly, cook a real meal for yourself twice a week, get outside for 10 minutes a day.
Because doing those things shifts your nervous system. When you are in the throes of heartbreak, you're trapped in that sympathetic nervous system state, the panic, the anxiety, taking 10 minutes to walk outside, or the tactile experience of chopping vegetables and cooking a meal forces your brain into a parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode. It changes how you feel physically inhabiting your own body.
You stop feeling like a fragile thing that was discarded, and you start feeling like a functional human being who's actively going somewhere. You carry your shoulders differently. You make eye contact with strangers.
And that physical shift naturally changes your psychological state. But there's a massive, very subtle trap hidden in this rebuilding phase.
Oh, the audience trap.
Yes.
This is the sneakiest part of human psychology. You start doing the work. You're running the half marathon, you're cooking the beautiful meals, you're reconnecting with friends and radiating at parties. But deep down, in the darkest corner of your mind, you are doing all of this just in case he hears about it through a mutual friend.
It's the crux of this entire deep dive. If you want this to work, you must brutally and completely detach from the male gaze. You cannot make him the audience of your growth.
Because if your self-improvement is just a performance for an audience of one, it's completely hollow. The text warns that he will subconsciously feel the hunger underneath your actions.
They always do.
Right? If you're glowing up just to prove a point to him, you're still giving him all of your power.
It's the difference between genuine independence and a strategic performance. Real, unbothered energy cannot be manufactured. It requires fundamentally knowing your worth without his validation.
Yeah.
The source actually suggests a very specific exercise for this, writing down 10 qualities you bring to a relationship that have absolutely nothing to do with your physical appearance.
It's about healing that dependency loop. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author actually brings up a concept from relationship expert James Bauer. She mentions his book, His Secret Obsession, and this idea of the hero instinct. Can we dig into the mechanics of that for a second?
We really should, because it explains why detaching from his validation is so disarming. The hero instinct is the psychological theory that men have a biological drive to feel essential, to be a provider, or to feel like they are saving the day.
Okay.
Often, women inadvertently feed this by making the man the sole arbiter of their happiness. You rely on him to tell you that you're beautiful or smart or worthy.
So you're basically casting him as the hero of your own life.
Precisely. And when a breakup happens, he expects you to crumble, which reinforces his status as the crucial, essential piece of your existence.
Wow.
But when you detach from his validation, when you source your worth internally, you remove him from that hero role. You are no longer a damsel in distress. That shift in the dynamic is deeply confusing and intriguing to a man because the script he expected to play out has been entirely rewritten.
The paradox we're circling here is almost funny, you know. The only way to make him regret losing you is to genuinely stop caring if he regrets losing you. You just have to become this elevated version of yourself, and he will eventually sense the shift. But let me ask you the million-dollar question on behalf of the listener right now. How do you actually trick your human validation-starved brain into not caring? Like, when you've spent years looking at yourself through his eyes, how do you flip that switch?
Well, you don't trick your brain. You have to manually override it through what the author calls internal rearrangement.
Internal rearrangement.
Yeah, it requires an uncomfortable level of self-policing.
Yeah.
When you get dressed in the morning, you have to pause and ask yourself, am I wearing this because it makes me feel powerful, or am I wearing this because it's his favorite color and I might run into him at the coffee shop?
Wow. That is calling yourself out on the carpet.
It is necessary, though. Are you taking that pottery class because you genuinely want to learn, or because it makes for a great I'm thriving Instagram story that he might see?
Ouch.
Every time you catch yourself doing something for the storyline of your recovery rather than the reality of your joy, you have to actively redirect. You have to constantly remind your brain, my worth was never his to confirm.
Your worth was never his to confirm. That is a sentence you could build an entire life around.
Truly.
So let's play this out. You endure the silence. You channel the raw biological grief into your own infrastructure. You successfully remove him as the audience, and you start sourcing your worth internally. You're actually doing it. And then, a random Tuesday night, the phone lights up.
Of course it does.
It's him. Because the reality is, when you genuinely pull away and stop feeding their ego, they very often come back.
They do. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult stage of the process, the art of letting go. If he is going to return, it has to be on the back of your genuine distance. It cannot be the result of a maneuver you engineered.
The text is so explicit about this. It makes a stark distinction between chasing and allowing. It basically argues that men who return to women who chase them almost always leave again because the underlying dynamic of desperation hasn't actually changed.
Think about it like the stock market. For the duration of your relationship, you are investing 80% of your emotional capital into his stock. When the relationship ended, your instinct was to keep investing, trying to save a failing company.
Right.
The entire process we've discussed today is simply reallocating your portfolio. You pull your capital out of him and you invest it entirely into your own assets, your health, your friends, your career, your peace of mind.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. Because eventually, your own valuation gets so incredibly high that he realizes he made a terrible trade. He
Exactly.
wants to buy back in. But by the time he realizes that, you might look at his stock and realize it's a terrible investment for you.
Exactly. You've let go of the outcome. If he does reach out, the directive is to respond warmly, but with absolutely zero urgency. You're not dropping everything to text him back within 30 seconds. You aren't hanging by the phone because you are genuinely occupied with the business of running your own life.
Because the ultimate goal of this entire framework isn't actually about getting him back at all. The goal is building a life that is so rich, so secure, and so fulfilling that you would choose to live it exactly the same way, whether he is in it or not.
Exactly.
The author challenges the reader to write out a 6-month vision for their life that does not factor him in whatsoever.
This raises an important question for you listening right now. Look honestly at your daily habits, your schedule, and the goals you're currently chasing. Are you building a performatively busy calendar designed to look like healing to an outside observer?
Right?
Or are you cultivating a life that genuinely flows with meaning for you, regardless of who is watching?
So what does this all mean? The final, quiet realization you come to at the end of this process is that you made a conscious decision to become someone entirely new.
Mm.
And you could never have become this person while you were still busy managing his emotions, analyzing his texts, and shrinking yourself to fit into his life.
You outgrow the version of yourself that needed him. The woman he thought he could afford to lose no longer exists.
So the greatest revenge you can ever exact on someone who didn't see your value isn't an angry voicemail or a jealous photograph. It's simply outgrowing the need for revenge entirely. You become someone remarkable, and the fact that he might notice is just a totally irrelevant side effect.
The irony is that by letting go of the desire to make him regret it, you guarantee that he will.
Exactly. Now, to wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a thought that takes all of these psychological shifts and pushes them one step further. We've talked about how the void of a breakup creates this intense, raw energy. We've talked about how channeling that pain can launch businesses, spark incredible physical transformations, and force us to entirely rebuild our social world.
Yeah, that rocket fuel.
Right. So what if the real tragedy isn't that the relationship ended? What if the tragedy is that for so many of us, our routines are so comfortable that it literally takes a broken heart to finally introduce us to the most powerful, authentic, and independent version of ourselves?
Oh, wow.
If that is true, if the pain is the exact catalyst required for your ultimate evolution, ask yourself, was his leaving actually the greatest gift he could have ever given you?
That completely reframes the loss into an absolute advantage. It's brilliant.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As the author reminds us at the very end of her work, keep going. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to put yourself on trial. And you certainly do not have to perform your pain for an audience of one.
Absolutely.
You get to expand. You get to take all that capital and invest it right back into yourself. We will catch you next time.